So Giovanni, Sardinia, it's a big subject. We had a great time when we were there.
So how long have we got now?
Well, really, it's like a country in its own right, isn't it?
Well,
It's Italy, but it's not quite Italy.
Islands, and actually, although it's the second biggest island in Italy after Sicily, we're further away from Italy. So, we say that we're Sardinian, not Italian.
I saw a lot of that when I was in Sardinia.
Yes.
There's even a kind of freedom movement, isn't there? Maybe we talk about food and not politics.
Yeah, no, it's quite far, and obviously, although as you know, Italy, it's divided in so many different regions. Let's break down Italy in 4 parts, right? North, center, south, islands.
Right.
It's so diverse, right? As you know, travel around Italy and food changes, the dialect, the language, like all this, and that obviously translates into ways of living and all that. But I think islands even more so.
Well, it's insular, and that's what the word means, right?
Yeah.
And so things don't change quickly in an island, do they?
Not really.
And the other thing that struck me about Sardinia when we were there was that where it's located, it really is at the crossroads. And almost every culture has passed through at some stage, from the Phoenicians right through.
The Catalans, the Spanish. We always say, the true Sardinians live in the middle of the island because they escaped in the past to hide from the coastline, which was always dangerous.
And this is really interesting. You think island, seafood, coastal? No. The Sardinians lived inland, didn't they?
The seafood came about maybe over 100 years ago, which sounds like a long time, but it's not really for Sardinia because it's so old. But I grew up eating meat, pasta, bread,
pork, lamb, mutton.
Pork, lamb, all the baby goat, and a lot of bread, a lot of cheese. Seafood in my life came around when I was growing up,
Is it more about the tourism? Was it when people started coming to Sardinia for holidays?
Correct. Now the coast, obviously is so popular. It's beautiful, and the tourism obviously, brought all that to the table. But I don't know if it was because also seafood wasn't affordable. It wasn't easy to get, on the hills.
They weren't fishermen, right? So the seafood was the things that you could harvest from the shore, the cockles, the clams, the octopus mussels that were in the rock pools.
Yeah, all that. So I grew up eating, no seafood, really, until
Amazing
I was, I don't know, 16, 17, and I started having some mussels and some prawns, discovered, all this food that for me was very unusual in a way, which sounds crazy, but that's the way it is.
Now, there is one seafood product that is so typical of Sardinia, and I'm thinking of botarga. So tell us a bit about botarga, because we're going to be using that in this
botarga, it's in my heart, because, we started using botarga many, many years ago, and I always thought that, the best, well, it still is, the best botarga in the world is Sardinia, until I discovered very casually that the Sardinian botarga is made with Australian mullet roe.
So we send the mullet roe over to Sardinia to turn it into botarga.
And then they sell it back here. And when I discovered that, now we make our own botarga using, Australian beautiful salt. Also Alex, she's amazing at what she does.
Sure.
We needed a salt. It was an important part of, making botarga because there's only 2 things really. It's the raw and the salt, right? And then you got to air dry it. So the salt had to resemble a little bit of Sardinian salt, which is salty, minerally. You got to have all these characteristics that sometimes you don't find in Australian salt. Where Alex did that, she did a mix for us.
Right.
Also, it was quite fine because then it sticks better. And now we have, an Australian salt, Australian roe, Sardinian botarga.
I love it. Australian Sardinian chef.
Exactly.
What are some of the other typically Sardinian products? Tell us about pane carasau.
Pane carasau, probably the most popular bread. Not in the whole of Sardinia,
right? Because
it's from more like centre north,
okay.
Nuoro, especially Nuoro because it's where most of the shepherds live with the sheep and making pecorino and go away for a couple of months to find grass, and they used to make this bread that it was completely dehydrated, right, and crispy, so it keeps for longer. That was the idea of making pane carasau.
Of course, so they could carry it with them.
They could carry it with them, and it wouldn't go stale, right?
Right.
Because it is probably the most simple recipe to make bread because you only have water, flour, yeast, and salt, right? But the steps, and it's so complicated with the proving, and then it's got to separate.
Puffs up in the oven, and I remember we made it in the pizza oven when we did the book.
And if it doesn't,
you don't have to make it. We're sending you some.
No, making carazao is crazy.
But if you want to, the recipe's in the book.
You can give it a go, definitely. But you don't know that you've done everything correct and well until it gets in the oven, and if it doesn't separate,
start again.
You got to start all over again. So that was the idea of the carazao. It's also called panevresa because it was made. Fresa means fresare il terreno, so it means plowing the land.
Right.
So they used to make it also in some occasions to celebrate the preparing of the land for the planting of the wheat or whatever they were planting. And it's always on. If I go home now, it's on the table. That is welcoming. Bread on the table means welcome to my house, and also you can't stop eating it because it becomes addictive.
Honestly, I've eaten so much of it with that amazing cheese you make, which you're going to be making as well. I've eaten so much of that when you've sent it out at the restaurant that then I haven't had room for anything else. But it's so
one
good.
Of the dishes that people still go. My favorite thing was the carazao with ricotta that you make, primo sale, and a drizzle of the abamele on top.
So tell us a bit about abamele because that's another very Sardinian.
Yeah, abamele translates to abba is water, mele is honey, so it's like a water and honey syrup kind of thing. So you get the honeycomb with the honey, and you soak it in water and boil it until the honeycomb becomes really soft, and then you put some orange zest, some cloves, some spices, and then after it's cooked and it becomes quite dark because it's been boiling with water, you then squeeze the honey out, and the water reduces and becomes this syrup, almost like with this honey caramel.
I love it flavor. Over the primo sale.
It's amazing.
So you're making some of that for us again. You don't have to make it.
Making that.
Gio's making that for us.
Everything.
Everything. You don't have to do anything. Well, almost nothing.
Just so we
have abamele, we have botaga, we have pane carazao. Fregola we'll talk about when we cook the fregola recipe. Pecorino. That's the other thing that to me is so Sardinian. Pecorino sardo.
Yeah, look, pecorino sardo. I mean, there is pecorino sardo, probably pecorino romano. They're the two most popular pecorino in Italy.
How do you think they differ? How do we tell them apart?
The pecorino romano, it's a little bit firmer compared to the Sardinian, and it's a little bit saltier, right? And more
Which
crumbly.
one's saltier?
The romano.
The romano, saltier and
crumbly, firmer. But a lot of the pecorino romano is made by Sardinian shepherds, moved to Lazio.
Yes, I did read that.
Yeah, even in Tuscany, a lot of
Tuscan pecorino.
Pecorino Toscano, it's from Sardinia. I went to when I did a tour one day. I went to this cheese maker in Tuscany, near Pienza. That's quite famous Pecorino Toscano. And I walked into this, little factory, like a very boutique, handmade stuff. And this lady comes out, dressed in black. And I'm just going, she has to be Sardinian. She looked Sardinian.
Okay.
And she started talking to me in dialect. And I went, wow, I can't believe this. Like, here I am in Tuscany. So, obviously, this is the mother. There's a little family that does, really great pecorino. But so often, it's made by Sardinians that they moved away from Sardinia because they got land.
Took the tradition with them.
Took the tradition with them. But look, pecorino sardo, there is so many different ones, obviously, depending on the area in Sardinia. Probably the most popular ones, and the ones that, I always remember to be so good are, just a regular pecorino, what we call like a semi-stagionato. That's the one good to eat. So it's not too aged, it's not too fresh.
So it's not a grating cheese and it's not a fresca.
In between. That's the one that we keep at home to eat, right? And then, there is the one that is more aged, stagionato maturo, which is the one for grating. But also there is pecorino fresco. Now, this one is sometimes as young as 2 days, right?
Really?
So it gets made, it gets pressed, and then it's in the mold, and then it gets taken out after 2 or 3 days, sliced, and then it gets put sometimes in seadas because they make them with cheese.
Yes.
Or it gets just roasted, like the Greeks do the.
Yes, like a saganaki.
Correct.
Okay.
And they probably the three that, you know, and sometimes, in some cases, rarely, the sheep's milk gets mixed with a little bit of cow's milk.
Okay, but rarely.
Rarely. Because sometimes, you know, sheep's milk, we call it for the tourists, because pecorino is pecorino. You can smell the sheep.
Yes.
And then you know, they
There's
put
that
a little...
lanolin smell a little bit. So when
Correct.
they mix in the cow's milk, that's a more modern thing.
Correct.
For people who don't quite like the smell of the... Okay.
And it's more easy to eat, you know, you sell it easier and all that. I'm always say it's very touristy.
You're getting pure pecorino sardo. You're not getting any cow's milk.
100%. And then, you know, the one of the most distinctive one is the Fiore Sardo. Fiore Sardo, it's slightly smoked. Okay? So this is aggressive, gutsy, lots of flavor, a little bit of smoke. It's not for everyone, right? But often is used for grating on maloredos with, you know, a pork ragu, which is alla campidanese. That, you know, is what you put on top. But again, you need to be a cheese lover, because that is...
I am a cheese lover.
Yeah.
You know, Giovanni, I feel like we're just scratching the surface here. We're kind of doing Sardinian greatest hits to get us started.
That's exactly what I say. Like, how long have we got? Because...
Well, you know what? It just means that in another year or so, we'll ask you for another hit. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
Salute.
Definitely. Salute.
Happy summer.